Welcome back to TCK Potters, episode 182 of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Guasco. Very excited today. We got a newcomer to the podcast, Next Level Fantasy Football. What's up, my man? How you feeling today?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well. Yo, we brought you on here. We had a fun Instagram group message we got to collaborate and help each other out, which I highly recommend everybody get a part of. If you're listening to this and you're not a part of a text thread with your homies, or you're not into an Instagram league with some of the fantasy people in the industry, I highly recommend that you message some of them and see if you can get involved, because there's a lot of talent and information floating around the space that you can definitely be a part of. So we met through that, and we just had an awesome mock draft on Sleeper. Shouts out to Sack Attack Podcast and the FF Mechanic for throwing that together and helping get everything. I slid in at the last minute as the 12th pick, so I was in there, but Next Level's also involved. And what we want to do today, I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourself, your channels, and you know how we do it on here. I want my folks to know who you are and vice versa, so give you a chance to introduce yourself. But we're going to jump in here. We're basically going to recap this mock draft. We're not going to go through every pick per se, but we are going to go through each round, and each of us will have an opportunity to maybe mention a value pick that we thought was a good pick at the space, and maybe an interesting pick potentially that we may potentially disagree with. And then, of course, we'll talk about our individual picks as we go through that. So before we get into the draft, man, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself to our listeners here, and give us your name, your accounts, whatever, why you dig fantasy football, how long you've been rolling, and where you're from maybe, and what you're doing.
Oh, what's up, man? I run Next Level Fantasy Football on Instagram. Started right before the season. I was doing it. I had some success. I've been playing at least 8 years,
Nice.
A lot of winnings. I just trying to give people my advice, help other people out,
That's what it's all about, man. That's great. Where are you coming from?
I'm in Florida right now. Born in
Florida.
New York. Giants, baby.
Yeah, there you go. East Coast. I love it, man. Pretty much every guest on the podcast is East Coast. Everybody out here on our thread knows we're West Coast. Obviously, the Candlestick Kids with the 49ers, but I'm up in Eugene, Oregon. So once again, on the Candlestick Fantasy Podcast, we're going coast to coast. I spent a lot of time in Florida, actually touring with my band. I've been up in New York and up in New England as well. So I like the East Coast a lot. And y'all got some sun. I see it behind you, which is nice, man.
It's nice out.
42 degrees right now in Oregon. So you can see my hoodie and like, what the hell? Why you
Yeah.
Yeah, bro. I'm a little bit chilly. All right, man. Well, pleasure to meet you, brother. Let's get into this. Let's have some fun. Yo, so first pick here, I want to throw out all the homies in the league here, and anybody that's tuning in, if I mispronounce your handle or I got it incorrect, I apologize ahead of time. I'm doing my best on what I see here. But shouts out to Sack Attack once again for throwing it together. Rowan Zuba, 84. Lepiscopo Show, the FF Mentor, FF Mechanic. Unpleasing is on here, but I believe that was a stock thing that got thrown in there, though. So I apologize if that's not you. Next Level, of course, Run Out the Clock, Junkie Nation, Fantasy on Tap, Fantasy Football Truth, and yours truly, TCK Pod. Let's jump right into it, man. You had the 7th pick overall. I had the 12th pick. Let's run through the draft up to you, and maybe we'll go each player through the first 3 rounds to let people know how it went, and then we'll just skate through that. So the first round went, this is a 12-team PPR, no defense, no kicker, quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a flex, and a tight end. So pretty basic standards without the defense and the kicker. So 101, no surprise, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Zeke, Michael Thomas, first receiver off the board, no surprise there, Dalvin Cook, Nuke Hopkins, and then you were up with the 7th pick overall. Who are you going with?
I was obviously got to go running back first, especially when Hopkins, Thomas gone. I mean, especially PPRs between Chubb, you got Adams on the board, you go Kamara. But especially with Hunt, good chance he leaves. They just got Stefanski as the offensive coordinator. That's where Dalvin strived last year. Passing game, especially if Hunt leaves, Stefanski loves the running backs in the pass game. So you just got to go running back first, especially with the deep wide receiver core in the league.
Absolutely. So who was your pick?
I took Chubb with the 7th.
Nick Chubb, 7th pick. I thought it was a great pick. There's no way he's going to fall to the end of the first
Yeah.
round, but I was trying to think at the 12 spot. I was trying to think who might fall my way, right? So if you're in the first 5, 6, 7 picks, you probably have a really good idea of
Yeah.
2 or 3 guys that you can get, that you have to get, or they're not going to fall. At the 12th pick, I'm kind of just at the mercy of the draft.
Yeah, you could have went anyone.
Yeah. So
I
I went
love the Godwin
with
pick.
cool. Thanks. Yeah, I went with we had Kamara, and then Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon picked right before me. I went with Chris Godwin, 4th receiver off the board, ahead of Mike Evans, which I'll get into in just a second. But I actually wanted to go with Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
I think we'll get into our surprises and good picks here in a second for the draft or for the round. But Joe Mixon, I wanted to be my pick. I think the Bengals are going to have a huge bounce back next year. 9 of their games were within 1 possession. Of course, Joe Burrow most likely making it. And they have the second year of Zach Taylor, which I like a lot. A.J. Green returns. They should have a healthy offensive line. Everything's feeding into me loving Joe Mixon this year. I loved him last year, even with the bust in the first half. Anyway, he gets picked right before me by Fantasy Football Truth, had the same mindset. So I went with Chris Godwin. This is something where I felt good about the pick, but I was trying to figure it out this offseason. Whether I go Mike Evans or Chris Godwin for the Bucks. And, of course, a lot of this has to do with Jameis Winston and what happens with him. Now, we're talking pre-free agency, pre-NFL draft, everything else. So a lot of this is speculation at this point. However, I do think Jameis Winston leaves Tampa Bay, and I think that affects Mike Evans tremendously. I don't think it affects Chris Godwin, and we know that Bruce Arians as a coach targets the slot as he did with Larry Fitzgerald for many years in Arizona. I love Chris Godwin. I think he's a hell of a player. Great touchdown upside, receptions, yardage, the whole thing. He's young, on the rise. Chris Godwin is my first pick at the 12 spot. Of course, I'm on the turn. Coming back around, I went with Leonard Fournette. Obviously, a ton of question marks. I did pick him in front of Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, who just got paid, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, and the rest. I felt like Leonard Fournette had a breakout season last year. Of course, he had career highs with his rushing yards, and he only had 3 touchdowns last year. I don't think that's going to continue. I think he definitely upgrades there. I think they stick with Minshew, get rid of Foles, and that offense runs a little bit better. Overall, he gets more opportunities. So I felt pretty good about my first 2 picks, Godwin and Fournette. Before we jump in the second round, let's dive back to the first. Any surprises in the first round for you?
I mean, obviously, gotta apply. Henry goes back to Tennessee. I mean, you got to take Henry end of the first because, 1,500 yards, whatever. But they got a lot of question marks. They got Conklin leaving, and you got Saffold getting older. I mean, you still got Taylor Lewan there, but that O-line could be a question mark. I mean, obviously, his lack of passing receptions, 18 last year. And that would be the only one for me. I mean, Kamara is he was off last year, but you got to take Kamara. It's a no-brainer.
Totally agree. I would totally agree. I think, Derrick Henry's going to go in the first round, and if you're looking at running backs heavy, you got to take him. But I did think it was early. I mean, I would have picked Joe Mixon, Fournette, Aaron Jones, maybe even Eckler over Derrick Henry. I just see the regression coming. We said it last year, and he beasted it out again this year, but a lot has to do with the offensive line, as you mentioned. Conklin's a big part of that, and their quarterback situation. We'll see what happens with Tannehill or Henry. All right, going back in the second round after my Fournette pick, we're going back the other way. We had Tyreek Hill, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Julio Jones, and then your second pick at the 2-6 spot. Who did you go with and why?
I took Jacobs here, and, even though running back, it's between Jacobs. You had Miles Sanders, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans. But especially after last year, you see speculation of Brady going to the Raiders, which would obviously help him out. You see passing work is going to increase for Josh Jacobs. 1,200 yards last year, 8 touchdowns. And probably best RB2 you could have taken here. And
absolutely. Nice rookie.
Yeah.
And back-to-back second-year players are going here with Josh Jacobs, Mike Evans in between, and then Miles Sanders again. I expect big years out of both of those guys. I like the Josh Jacobs picks here, and You went with the two running back strategy. It looks like Mechanic and Fantasy on Tap had the same strategy as well. And I like that this year. I've been saying on the podcast for a couple of weeks here that depending on your draft position, I think that going two running backs is a smart move because there's so much value at the receiver position in general, but especially with this rookie class, wherever these guys fall, of course, we don't know that yet, but a lot of these guys are going to, I think, have immediate value, whereas the running backs tiers get chopped out really quick. So I do like the two running back strategy there for you in the middle of the draft. Like I said, Mike Evans, Miles Sanders, Travis Kelce, first tight end off the board. Amari Cooper, George Kittle goes right after him. Then we got Golladay wrapping her back around to the third round. Before we do that, any surprises in the second round for you? We, of course, had the two tight ends go off in the second round. Late second round, though. Do you think that's maybe a value, or do you think that's a little bit early? And any other surprises in that second round?
I mean, especially you look at like Mentor took Kelce instead. He got Drake, who's the next running back off the board, but like you say another team takes Drake, then the running backs fall off drastically for your RB1. And then you look at Kittle with the second to last pick, and he went Kittle before he had a wide receiver 1, and then you see Golladay going up next. Galladay's potential top 10, top 5 wide receiver. That's my only question.
Are you a tight end early guy, or do you rather pass and wait?
I'd rather pass and wait. You find that value.
Fair enough.
I like to draft a few.
I'm somewhat with you. I do say generally though that if you're going to go early with the tight ends, obviously Kittle and Kelce are your guys. And I think back in the second round is good value in general, but I actually agree with you that in those two teams' particular situations, I think they could have gone another way. I might pick Amari Cooper there over Travis Kelce, and I might pick Golladay over Kittle with the chance that you might even get those guys back on the turn. That's another thing. These guys only have a couple picks until their next pick, and they might be able to get a tight end anyway at that point. But c'est la vie, they went with the two tight ends late. I like the value. I'm just not sure about those two particular situations. I thought Aaron Jones that early, I'm a little bit skeptical. I think he's a beast. I love Aaron Jones. I love the Packers. I think they're going to be just fine. But I thought, maybe with Melvin Gordon pretty much leaving, Austin Eckler, I think he's going to get a bigger chance. And Josh Jacobs as well, maybe even Miles Sanders in the overall touches there. So I thought taking Aaron Jones before all those guys was a little bit early. Let's wrap around the third round here. DJ Moore, AJ Green going in the second pick of the third round. I'm going to talk about him in a second. Cortland Sutton, and then as you mentioned, Kenyon Drake goes to Mentor there. Patrick Mahomes off the board. First quarterback, not Lamar Jackson. Patrick Mahomes off the board, fifth pick in the third round. OBJ, and then it was your next pick at 3-7. Who did you go with and why?
I went Juju here because obviously I got the two running backs. You got Kelce and Kittle off the board. And, personally, I wasn't looking at Mahomes, but if Mahomes is still there per se, I'd probably go best player available, which probably have been Mahomes, but we would have seen. Had to take the wide receiver 1, and especially with Big Ben coming back, you got other receivers around him. Hopefully they can figure it out with James Conner, Benny Snell, whatever way they go, because that'll help Juju. But then you see wide receivers that are off the board, and he's really the lowest wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2. So you got to have at least one high wide receiver.
And obviously you have faith in him drafting him. Are you concerned with Big Ben? Obviously has question marks. First of all, age. Secondly, coming back off of his shoulder surgery. And we did see a decent game from Juju, over 70 yards and 6 receptions in his first game before Ben got hurt. But Juju had his own injury concerns. The Steelers are not the same team without Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. We saw that last year. Are you concerned with Juju in general, this draft pick aside? Obviously, you have faith in him picking him. But just moving forward with the Steelers this year, do you have faith in Juju as a top three round draft pick?
It's not necessarily like I think he's going to be top 10, top 7, whatever. Just you look at the value towards the end of the third round, and that's great for Juju because he was going early, mid-second last year, and he just didn't pan out. But obviously, you have concerns. Big Ben getting up there, a few years left, coming off the elbow injury. But Juju, you just need receptions. He's a big play guy, so he's bound to break one per game.
Love it. Definitely a yak king, if you will, yards after catch. I like the pick a lot, actually. I do have faith in Juju. Also, I think Odell's going to have a bounce back as well there. So, again, we're looking at value here at this point of the draft. Getting Juju, who could potentially be easily a wide receiver 1, but definitely, top 8 if everything clicks and he is that new AB, if you will, with Big Ben. We've seen it for years. So I like that pick a lot. Running through the third round, Devin Singletary, Le'Veon Bell, Cooper Kupp, Melvin Gordon, and then my 2 picks at the 12 spot. I went with Calvin Ridley with my third pick here. This is I thought super value personally. I've got Calvin Ridley ahead of Cooper Kupp and Cortland Sutton for sure, AJ Green, DJ Moore, a lot of these guys that went in the earlier part of the round. I've got Calvin Ridley significantly ahead of them. We just recently, as you heard earlier this week, Daniel and I went through our predictions and our bowl predictions and our crazy calls from last year. And one of his was that Calvin Ridley surpasses Julio Jones in fantasy points. That didn't happen in 2019, but I could see it happening in 2020.
Definitely.
Therefore, I thought there was a lot of value there. Matt Ryan doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon, so I like that pick a lot in the third round. I'll go over my fourth round pick in just a second, but let's dive back into the third, and then we'll crush out the rest of this draft. I'm going to talk about AJ Green here in a second, but I'll give you the floor now. Any surprises in the third round for you?
DJ Moore with the first pick in the third round. I just really don't like that pick. It's
Why
too
not?
early. Cam is a question mark. He's better with Kyle Allen, but you saw with Cam, absolute no production from him because he needs receptions. He's a big PPR guy. He'll give you 10 receptions with a good quarterback. But especially with reports coming out that Cam's going to be back, you don't know how Cam's going to be this year. I mean, McCaffrey's certain, but after McCaffrey, especially you got Curtis Samuel who needs touches. You got Ian Thomas emerging as a pass catcher there. I just don't like that pick too early.
I'm with you. I also am not a Cortland Sutton hater by any means, but we're not sure exactly what Drew Lock's going to be able to do. I thought that was a bit early as well, especially considering the receivers after those guys, right? So I don't necessarily hate those guys per se, but DJ Moore, AJ Green, Cortland Sutton, all three of them going before Odell Beckham, Juju Smith-Schuster, Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, even Allen Robinson potentially, who was picked later, Keenan Allen. I mean, a lot of these guys that we'll talk about here in a second, to have those three guys go before all of them, I thought was quite surprising. AJ Green specifically, love me some AJ Green. I'm stoked that he's coming back. I'm actually somewhat excited for him to come back to the Bengals. He kind of wants to be there. I think Joe Burrow is going to be as good as Andy Dalton right off the bat, and I think he'll be quite better in the second half of the season, and certainly moving forward if they bring back AJ Green next year as well. Every year that he's played at full season, he's been a top 10 receiver, and I think that continues. Obviously, he's got his lower body injuries, which are no joke. That is definitely frustrating. Taking him in the beginning of the third round, I think, is very risky. However, I don't think you have to do that, and if you're able to pick him in the fourth or fifth round, I think he gets significant value. Last year, with all the concerns, I was able to draft him in like the 8th round in multiple leagues. Of course, that bit me in the ass overall because he didn't play, but some of those are keeper leagues. So I'm considering keeping AJ Green in like the 8th round, which if he's 80% usual AJ Green, he should be high RB2 at least. So I like AJ Green in general. I just thought it was a bit early for DJ Moore, AJ Green, and Cortland Sutton in general.
Yeah.
Let's move back through the 4th round here. I picked Lamar Jackson with the first pick in the 4th round. This is interesting. First of all, I was surprised that he even made it this far just in the way that other mock drafts are going. I'm not really a top quarterback guy in general. I'm a late round QB guy for sure. Last year I was picking all sorts of Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray's and Josh Allen's and things like that if I didn't get like Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers last year at the value. So this year, Patrick Mahomes goes off in this mock draft. Of course, again, it's very, very early. This shit could shake out and totally change. But in this draft, he went off at 3-5. And so to get Lamar Jackson about, 7-8 picks later, I thought was great. Good value, 4th round pick. So I went with Lamar Jackson. Of course, he's got the rushing upside. set the record by far rushing, grew into a passer this year. I think it can only go up, and we know that the Ravens offense is really catered to Lamar Jackson specifically. They should be bringing in more wide receiver weapons there. Mark Ingram is a great compliment there, so I like the Ravens in general. Good pick there. Heading back through the rest of the fourth-round pick to your next pick, Keenan Allen, James Conner, Adam Thielen, Chris Carson, and then your pick in the fourth round. Looks like you went with another Raven as well. Who was it and why?
I took Mark Ingram, 6th pick in the 4th, and I was really surprised he's still here. I mean, you see Chris Carson went right before him, James Conner, even Melvin Gordon and Le'Veon Bell. And Ingram had one of the best years in fantasy last year, top 10 running back last year.
Better seasons than all those guys.
Exactly, especially Carson, Conner being injured, Gordon, no idea what's going to happen to him. Especially for my third running back, Ingram. Love that pick.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's stacking, and we'll get the rest of your roster, how it shook out at receivers, which would be interesting. But having those running backs early, I mean, you have 3 pretty much bell cows in a NFL that doesn't really have them anymore. Also, you have 3 running backs who can catch the ball, which I appreciate there. So I thought that was a good pick. Running out the rest of the round here, Kerryon Johnson, of course, coming back from injury again. A.J. Brown, Allen Robinson, Marlon Mack, Russell Wilson, third quarterback off the board. Todd Gurley, last pick of the 4th round. Wrapping back around, DJ Chark, Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, David Montgomery, Michael Gallup, Damian Williams, and then your 5th pick. This you've already got 3 receivers, no tight end, no quarterback, only 1 receiver. What do you go with in your 5th pick and why?
Well, obviously, I'm a receiver here. You know, there's no – I mean, personally, if there's someone worth taking, I would have taken another running back, to be honest, because wide receiver's so deep. Like you see, I got Kirk, 7th pick here, and I mean, about normal value, you'd say. You see who went before, who went after, about good value, but you expect big things out of Kyler Murray this year. Got Fitz 1 more year. The only question is, if they take CeeDee Lamb with the 8th pick, then what happens to Kirk? You know, I mean, could potentially help him, but with Fitzgerald there, you got Kenyon Drake coming back, be a big part of that offense.
I like the pick. I think it's good. I'm a little I'm not concerned. Concerned's the wrong word. I'm hesitant on Christian Kirk. I think we all know that the talent's there and the opportunity is there, but you're right. They could draft an upcoming CeeDee Lamb, makes sense, but they could draft any one of these high-profile wide receivers for the Cardinals, and that's what they need in this air raid offense. Fitz is going to be great for about 8 weeks, and then he's going to slow down at the end of the season, does every year. We don't know what's going to happen at the running back position. Could be Kenyon Drake. David Johnson could stick around. They could get rid of Drake. Chase Edmonds was great when he was given an opportunity, so they might just run cheap at that point. Be interesting with the Cardinals. I think they take a huge step. Actually, kind of my totally another subject we don't need to get into, but my 2 super sleepers for this year, teams-wise, I think the Cardinals and the Bengals both have an opportunity to make the playoffs, which I think is pretty bold considering last year, but I think they could have drastic increases, and Christian Kirk would be a big part of that, of course. Now, I will say you did pick him over Robert Woods, Deebo Samuel, T.Y. Hilton, Tyler Lockett, a number of other guys. Why so much confidence in Christian Kirk as your wide receiver 2?
I mean, Woods, I was looking, you got Woods, obviously. You got Deebo Samuel, T.Y., Lockett, Edelman. And you can make a case for a number of these guys. But, I mean, you look, Woods is the 2nd and 3rd receiver there, not to mention tight ends. Running backs, that's crowded. You got Deebo, who's more of a boom-bust guy, and T.Y. is just injury-plagued. So, I mean, it is taking a chance because I'm really not sure. Obviously, that's why we do the mock early and not our official draft until later in the year. But you see, like, Kirk's potential to put 3 touchdowns in a game, win you a week, easily win you a season. With Kyler Murray on the rise, you got Kingsbury's offense. That offense is the next Chiefs. That's what I think.
Dig it. I like that. I like to hear that. And I'm sure fantasy players will be very excited if Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury can make this Arizona offense what it was a few years ago with Kurt Warner and company. So I like to see that. All right, let's move through the next handful of picks. As I mentioned, Robert Woods, Debo, T.Y. Hilton, Philip Lindsay, and then my next two picks. I went with Mark Andrews here in the back of the fifth round. Again, not really a early tight end guy, but at this point, I was looking at the draft pick. Now, here's the deal. A lot of my picks from this point on strictly had to deal with where I was drafting at the back of a round and at the beginning of another round. I don't mind being on the turn. I actually kind of like the two picks at a time, like 10, 11, 12, or 1, 2, 3. I like grouping like that because I can kind of set trends and end trends kind of a thing as far as drafts. However, when you're at the 12th pick, I have to make some serious decisions because I have, 24 picks until my next one sometimes, and there's a lot of potential of opportunity of players getting got, basically. So I went ahead and I went with Mark Andrews, who's my boy. I'm certainly stoked on Mark Andrews. Of course, always got to give a shout out to my man Summy of the Draft Room Pod for turning me on to Mark Andrews last year. I had him as like tight end number 12 or something in my rankings, and I thought it was way bullish on him. And Summy came on and had him as his tight end number 7. I was like, holy shit, dude, nobody's talking about Mark Andrews. What's up? Sure enough, turns it up. So I went with Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews there. I just like that combo a lot. Don't have to deal with quarterback. Don't have to deal with tight end the rest of my draft. I like it a lot. And to be honest with you, I wasn't super excited about the wide receivers and the tight end, or the wide receivers and running backs that I had to choose from at that point. So I just, again, reached for Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews to get those positions out of the way and get the top-tier guys. On the back end, I went with Tyler Lockett in the 6th round. I like that pick a lot. I'm not a huge Tyler Lockett guy. I'm actually super bullish on DK Metcalf, honestly, but a little too early for DK Metcalf at that point. And I think Tyler Lockett has another year of kind of being like the guy there. But DK Metcalf had 900 yards, similar receptions, similar touchdowns to Tyler Lockett, and Tyler Lockett had just over 1,000 yards. So I could see them kind of flopping this year. DK Metcalf also led the NFL in red zone targets, and we know that Tyler Lockett, he can go for 4 receptions any game. At this point, though, I just thought it was a good opportunity to get a third receiver. So you and I are kind of on different trajectories when I look at these rosters. You've got 3 quality running backs. After your next pick, which you share, you're going to have 3 quality receivers, no tight end, no quarterback. I have 3 receivers, 1 running back, a quarterback, and a tight end. So, again, these drafts can go any way. But I went with Tyler Lockett. I feel good about that pick, and I wasn't super bullish on the rest of these guys, so I kind of reached for him. Running back your way in the 6th round, Darius Geis, Zach Ertz going as the 4th tight end, Julian Edelman, and Tyler Boyd, and then your 6th round pick. This is a big one, man, and obviously there's huge expectations once again in the fantasy landscape. Who did you take in the 6th round and why?
I went Devontae Parker here, and I was stunned he was still here, to be honest. You see T.Y. Hilton going before him. Honestly, I would have taken him over Kirk, but the fact that, he's so low in the rankings, especially on the Sleeper app, I waited another round. And I was between him and Lockett and Edelman. And you look, all these guys, like, similar, but then you look at, like, that offense, and you look with Fitz, and they're just passing the ball. You got Preston Williams, who should be out a good part of the year with a torn ACL recovery. And especially if they get Melvin Gordon, then that Parker will see, I think, top 5 numbers.
Absolutely. We were able to see Fitzmagic light it up in Tampa Bay. Obviously, 2 supreme tight wide receivers in Godwin and Evans with them with the Bucs when he and Jameis were going back and forth 2 years ago. But we know that he's down to chuck it, and the talent with Devontae Parker has always been there. The frustration with fantasy is that the Dolphins, no disrespect to Florida, of course, have been trash for fucking ever, dude. And it's very frustrating because they've had talented guys, and it wasn't until Lamar Miller left that he was able to beast out. And it wasn't until some of these other, fantasy assets leave Miami that they actually get it done. Hopefully they can turn that page and they can get it going. And it looks like they're confident in Devontae Parker retaining him. So I'm with you, man. I think it's a good pick. I think it's good value there in the middle of the 6th round. And, of course, he's a huge upside guy. Low floor potentially too, but I think he's one of the more talented young receivers in the league, and potentially has huge upside for you there. So I thought that was a nice pick.
I mean,
Go ahead.
going back, like, you look at that floor, obviously, that offense could be horrendous. But you look, back half of the year, Parker's top 5 numbers, especially with, like, top receivers getting injured. You plug in Parker as your wide receiver 1. This is why, like, you see, like, Odell going in the 3rd round, DJ Moore. Like, I'd rather have Devontae Parker, especially in that offense, lack of weapons. And, like, people fear the double teams, but, like, that guy, you've seen him break, like, against the Eagles, you've seen him break those double teams, and they'll just feed him in that offense.
I love it, man. He finally played 16 games for the first time in his career last year.
Yep.
He also had his highest fantasy output by far. He was 50th in 2016, 50th in 2017, 105th in just 11 games 2018, but he finally pulled it together. Wide receiver 11 in PPR, wide receiver 6 in standard last year. And I was telling Lucas on a previous podcast, I forgot Devontae Parker was even straight up healthy and playing until the second half of the season. And dude was beasting. Over 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. Dude's the man, and now he gets a full season as that number 1 guy with the coach that finally believes in him. Adam Gase's trashed ass is finally gone and giving these guys an opportunity. So I'm excited for Devontae Parker too, man. I think that was great. So your receivers are looking huge upside and potentially very low floors as well, but good PPR guys with Juju, Christian Kirk, and Devontae Parker. I'm not going to run the rest of the names. We'll just be here all day. But we'll loop back around. A couple notable names maybe I'll mention as we go through the rest of our picks here. Let's see, we're on Devontae Parker. So coming up here, Raheem Mostert was drafted as the 9th pick in the 6th round by Mentor. Of course, I'm biased. I'm a 49er guy. I love me some Mostert. As a non-49er guy, do you think that he will be the top dog in San Francisco? And if so, do you think that Shanahan's going to actually he's not going to bell cow him. We know that he wants to use multiple guys, but do you think that Raheem Mostert, given the opportunity, could really be a top-end running back?
Oh, I mean, definitely. He showed, especially being the 3rd running back on the depth chart behind Breida and Coleman, he took that spot over, and he fucking ran with it. Like, you saw him score 2-3 touchdowns several times. And then, I mean, you look at the running backs after. I mean, Mentor could have went quarterback, could have went tight end, like my situation, similar. But then you see Rashad Penny, you see a bunch of backups going, and I think Mostert has one of the highest upsides, and especially with that ADP, like, that is a very valued pick right there.
Love it. I agree. He did have Kelsey early, so he's not worried about tight end. And spoiler alert, he does grab his first quarterback, which we'll mention here on the back end next round. But I totally agree, man. Of course, I'm a Niner guy. I love me some Mostert, but I thought that was early, man. Honestly, I thought that was awesome that he's getting the round, and he's ahead of Coleman, ahead of Breida. Of course, he's probably toast, but that'll be interesting to see what they do in San Francisco. Deshaun Watson goes off finally in the 6th round. I thought that was great value there. And then heading back around, Kyler Murray was Mentor's quarterback there, so he's pretty much set at each position at this point in his draft. Let's dive back to the next pick for you. This is the 7th pick in the 7th round. Again, you have 3 receivers, 3 running backs, no tight end, no quarterback. What did you do here?
I took Josh Allen, finally taking a quarterback. Was it the 6th quarterback off the board? And it was between Josh Allen and Jarvis for me. And I know I have 3 running backs, 3 receivers here, but, I mean, you can never have enough wide receiver running backs. Especially, I mean, you look at the quarterbacks also that went after him. You got, like, Dak, Aaron Rodgers, and especially with the running ability of Josh Allen. And you would like to see them add a 2nd receiver, hopefully in the draft. Like, get someone compliment John Brown. But, I mean, it's hard to wait on quarterbacks. You know, you get nervous in the draft, end up with Stafford or Matt Ryan. You know, just gives you confidence.
Who I will say, those 2 names in particular, it's funny you bring those guys up. Stafford and Ryan are my late round QB targets if I wait that long. And they're fine. We've seen both of those guys be top 3-5 quarterbacks, no problem. However, they're both getting older, and they don't have the rushing upside which we've seen for years with Cam Newton, for example, who's not a good quarterback at this point, but he runs the ball. And if he does, he's going to rack up those yards. Josh Allen is still growing into a quality quarterback throwing the ball, as we saw Lamar Jackson do this year, and he runs very well also. So, I mean, I'm with you, bro. Sixth quarterback in fantasy last year, Josh Allen, and he's still inaccurate. He still doesn't have weapons. He's still in a run-first offense. If any of those go his way in 2020, bro, we're talking top 5 potentially.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was looking, a few rounds we'll get there, but I'm looking like Matt Ryan, you got Breeze, and personally, I've had Matt Ryan almost every year I've played fantasy, and
Oh yeah,
I'd love Ryan as a backup, but then, you grab Josh Allen because you can plug him any week. He's got that high floor with the rushing ability, and that potential number one quarterback, like you saw with Lamar last year. Josh Allen is just as talented running the ball, probably a much better thrower than Lamar. Just if they give him the opportunity to boom, then he will.
totally agree. Let's move on. Your boy Jarvis went right after that there, and then Carson Wentz was picked as well. I was a little bit bummed. I was, so again, I have one running back at this point. I have 3 receivers, a quarterback, and a tight end. I'm in the 7th round. I obviously need running backs, which you'll see in a second. I went pretty crazy. But I was actually targeting Mike Williams. And even without just one running back, I was still targeting Mike Williams here. Just like I said, with Julio and Calvin Ridley potentially swapping the throne potentially this year or next, I also think that's going to happen with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. As I mentioned, my buddy Daniel made the prediction that Ridley would hop Julio. My prediction on the other side of that was that Mike Williams would hop Keenan Allen last year. Of course, that didn't happen. Phillip Rivers can only throw the ball like 17 yards. So any deep bomb to Mike Williams was either severely underthrown or overthrown. So if he didn't catch a 40-yard chuck, he wasn't really getting it done. Keenan Allen, of course, racking up for PPR. If they get a quarterback who is accurate and can throw the ball, I know not a lot of people are super high on Justin Herbert, just with these other quarterbacks. Of course, I'm a Duck. I watched every game that he played here in Eugene. I live down the street from the stadium. I think he's going to be just fine. So if they get a quarterback like him or someone else who could throw the ball down the field and create space, I think Mike Williams actually is able to make those big plays. We saw him score 10 touchdowns 2 years ago. I was bummed Mike Williams didn't fall, unfortunately. But since he didn't, I started targeting running backs for sure. I was surprised once I started digging into running backs because I was focusing on Mike Williams. Devonta Freeman and David Johnson were my next 2 picks. Now, this year, they're not sexy names by any means. They're kind of like, sketch, injured, getting older, not sure where they're going to be. I get all that. I'm kind of in the mindset now of if Devonta Freeman is healthy and if he lands in the quality spot or stays in Atlanta, and if David Johnson gets a second round and stays healthy, both of those guys have been top-end running backs in the last couple of years. I know the running backs fall off quickly, but I was thinking that if I get an opportunity to play either one of those guys, I have starting running backs potentially in potentially high-flying offenses if they're that number one dude, if Drake leaves and if Devonta Freeman comes back to Atlanta. So I took the risk here. I need running backs anyway, and I thought that these two are as good as any instead of grabbing a second-hand guy or a younger, PPR-only dude. So I went to Devonta Freeman and David Johnson here. I went 4 running backs in a row, which I'm going to get on in a second. But how do you feel about some of these older guys with Devonta Freeman and David Johnson specifically right now?
I mean, personally, I think they're both going to leave. You see the reports out of Atlanta that there's a chance they cut Freeman, and personally, I think they should. I mean, he's injury prone. They've always had to, they always use 2 running backs in that offense, but potentially I have Melvin Gordon going to the Falcons, and I think they go for a change. I mean,
that would be nasty.
They got the cap space they need to clear. They got, I think, $5 million right now in cap. But if they can clear $10 million, I think they go 1 running back as opposed to like Freeman, and you got Ito Smith right now. Because Freeman's like more of a pass catcher guy. He's 5'8", not that heavy. So it ultimately depends where he goes. Because if he lands in a good spot, he's not that old. So you could definitely see something out of him. But then you got David Johnson right after that. And I I don't know what to say. Like he's gonna need a good O line. He's gonna need a good offense.
Right.
You see him going to like, you'd hope he'd go to like the Chiefs, something like that.
Sure, and I'm not expecting David Johnson at all, no matter what, to be the David Johnson of 2016 that we all miss desperately. I was just thinking that he still can catch the ball. He did have a decent season. The
Oh yeah,
Cardinals were not scoring points, period. Nobody was scoring points in the first half of the season. And before Kyler Murray and the Cardinals really got their groove, Kenyon Drake came in the trade, got the opportunity with Chase Edmonds and David Johnson being hurt. Kenyon Drake fucking crushed, so you're not going to take him out. Makes total sense. I still think David Johnson has a year potentially left, and I just thought in this draft over everybody else, I thought I would take a risk on them. We'll see what happens. As far as Devonta Freeman goes, last year he was the running back 20. Of course, 2018 was destroyed with injuries, and 2017 he was running back 13. Before that, number 6 and number 1 overall in 2015. He has been injured, as you mentioned, though, every single season, unfortunately, so definitely risky there. Let's move on. One of my favorite late-round quarterbacks as well. Again, getting paid, my man. Dak Prescott here in the 8th round. I thought that was great value right after me. I would have picked him if I hadn't had Lamar at that point. I think that's a great pick. Let's buzz all the way to your next pick here, and you just picked Josh Allen. What did you go with here in the 8th round, your 6th pick?
I went Kareem Hunt, and obviously, like you can't go wrong with Kareem Hunt here. 8th round, especially I have Chubb. So if he stays in Cleveland, you got both of them. And if he goes to, say Miami, go somewhere else, and I mean, you're looking at a top 5, top 10 running back.
I think Houston would be pretty dope too.
Oh, I mean, his ability, like he can do it all.
Yeah.
I mean, but here I was going to go personally Hunter Henry because I think he goes back to the Chargers. I think he's a focal point of that offense now without Rivers still. But since he's gone, it's between Hunt and then a bunch of backups, I think Hunt's got one of the highest upsides of any player left on the board here.
I think that was a great call. And actually, when I was thinking about Freeman and David Johnson, Kareem Hunt was the only other name that I was considering. I didn't pick him only because, first of all, I personally think, just diving into like the back end shit, I personally think his legal stuff is going to catch up to him eventually. He's got, I mean, not even like the abuse thing that we all know about. He's got other shit, like possession of herb and just dumb stuff, shit that I don't care about personally. But like, the NFL's not about it, and he's been arrested a couple times. We saw with Zeke, it kind of trickle into the season, a late suspension. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not hearing a report. I'm not predicting shit. I'm a little bit worried about that kind of stuff. I'm also worried that he does stay in Cleveland, and I love me some Nick Chubb. So for you, having the handcuff, mandatory, I thought that was the best pairing of the whole draft, to be honest with you. Very smart move by you. Either way, you win, because if he moves, you're right, you have another starting running back. If he doesn't, you got Chubb's backup in a great offense. For me to have him as my running back 3, it would be super I feel like I'm more confident in David Johnson, which is not good, than I am in Kareem Hunt right now. And what I try to do with these drafts, which I think is important for listeners, and I like to get your feedback on this too, actually. Dude, we're in March, all right? Like, regular people don't take fantasy football as seriously as you and I do, and everybody else in this IG draft. All of us are grinding every day doing this shit because we're football nerds, and that's just what we do. The general public isn't going to start doing this shit till like July. So when I do mock drafts like this and we do podcasts and I recap them, I think about the situation right now. If I was drafting right now, what would I do? Because I think it's the most accurate, because we don't know free agency, we don't know what the draft, we don't know what trades. So right now, I'm more confident in David Johnson, Devonta Freeman than Kareem Hunt. Now, I'm very aware that in 2 months, Kareem Hunt could be a 3rd-round pick if he ends up somewhere else. So it's kind of weird when we do these mocks, but that was my mindset going into this. I thought it was a great pick for you. How do you feel about the mock mindset when you're going into these things this early in the year?
I mean, like you said, it's way too early to like actually look at these things. But like, if we were drafting today, especially being my 4th running back, I'd love to take Kareem Hunt. I mean, he does have the legal scandals, whatever, but the ability's there. He could go to another team. Even bye week. He's a fine bye week flex. PPR will give you at least 5 receptions a week. Like going back to your question, it's hard to I mean, you got Sammy Watkins, you got a bunch of upcoming free agents. You got players gonna get hurt between now and start of the season. It's hard.
Of course, Kareem Hunt only played 8 games last year because of suspension. Technically, he's not going to be charged with his possession of marijuana, so we don't necessarily have to super worried about it. He's shown numerous times to not have his head on straight, I guess, is what I'm worried about. So
sadly, yep.
Unfortunately, the talent does not make people smarter. Let's move forward, man. Couple of quarterbacks, really quick. So Matt Stafford, as you mentioned, a late round QB, he gets picked right after this in the 8th round. After Matt Stafford was Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers got picked in the 8th round as the 10th pick. Just very surprising to see him this low with his just historic run as being Aaron Rodgers. But that's kind of where we're at right now. I'll tell you this, if I didn't have a quarterback and I'm like late round, and Aaron Rodgers is in the 10th round, bro, every time. I mean, if you get 80% of Aaron Rodgers is better than most dudes. He's probably a QB1 by chance. Like, he's going to be better than Tom Brady, right? And Tom Brady's going to be a QB, probably the QB12 like he is every year. So I'm taking Aaron Rodgers for the upside every time. Sammy Watkins did get picked in the 8th round. Of course, he's mentioned that he may not want to play. He may not play at all. We'll see what happens there. Diving back around, a couple of tight ends come around the board. You do not have any tight ends yet. You've got your 4 running backs, and you have 3 wide receivers and a quarterback. Looks like you went tight end here. Who did you grab and why?
Yeah, like you said, I had to go tight end here. You look after, I took Dallas Goedert. Obviously, he's the backup, but like your Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, I fully expect Goddard to take Ertz's role. Like, Ertz is getting up there. You see Goddard's one of the most explosive tight ends. He'll sustain as a tight end too, but if he gets that role, if Ertz gets hurt, then he could be the top tight end.
I 100% agree. 100% agree.
Yeah, then you look after him, Gesicki, O.J. Howard. I'd much rather have Goddard because higher floor, higher ceiling. Just all around, I think, better player than both.
I dig it, bro. I like this a lot. And actually, we had a similar one last year. So 3 of these predictions, Ridley and Julio, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and Goddard and Ertz were 3 of our predictions where, the lesser, if you will, would hop the other guy. We were wrong on all 3 accounts, but I think we were just a year early. I really do. I think all 3 of those guys get flipped. I think Goddard overtakes Ertz this year as well. Ertz is not somebody that I'm going to target in drafts in general. I know he'll be just fine if he stays healthy, but I'd rather take the value in Goddard like this. And we'll talk about your strategy here. Obviously, I can see your next pick, which I thought was smart. But I don't want Goddard as my tight end 1 only, because technically he is the second fiddle, at least for the first chunk of the season, unless there's an injury. However, I think what you did is smart, which we'll get into in just a second. If you get Goddard, you got to get a second option who's going to be your tight end right away. So we'll talk about yours here in just a second. My next 2 picks in the 9th and the 10th round, Duke Johnson and Latavius Murray. So again, I had 1 running back up until the 7th round, and then I went Devonta Freeman, David Johnson, Duke Johnson, and Latavius Murray. Duke Johnson, strictly PPR. Even if, say, let's make it up, Kareem Hunt goes to Houston, I think he's the early down back. They can both catch the ball, but I think that helps them out. They can both basically use both those guys if they wanted to at the same time. Duke Johnson, we know, is a beast when they use him. I like him in the PPR realm. And then Latavius Murray, strictly if Kamara goes down, he's a league winner at round 10. That was just like I need some depth at running back of the guys coming up after him. I wasn't super excited about him, so I went Latavius Murray. And he's just a guy that's going to rot on my bench unless Kamara gets hurt. But let me bring this up, actually, because it's important for people to understand what he is actually capable of doing.
It's 2 games.
Latavius Murray, oh, man, beastin'. So he was able to let's see here. Sorry, bring this up real quick.
And, you think a guy like that, you look at his production without Kamara, you look at his production when early career on the Raiders, and you think he's definitely starting
Vikings too.
Back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so in week 7 and 8, he stepped in for Kamara. 27 rushes for 119 and 2 touchdowns against the Bears in Chicago. Week 8 against Arizona, 21 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown there. 9 receptions for 55 yards to go along with that. Latavius Murray is not going to do much with Alvin Kamara around. We know that. I know that. In the 10th round, though, to get a backup running back who is going to be a top-end running back for sure if Alvin Kamara goes down, it was a no-brainer for me there to get the depth. I was thinking about him and my boy Royce Freeman, another Duck. Of course, I'm biased. I know not a lot of people in the fantasy landscape like Royce Freeman. I think he's so much more talented than he's getting the opportunity. I don't hate Philip Lindsay, but I personally think that Royce Freeman is equally as able to do what Philip Lindsay does. Philip Lindsay does. He just is kind of the second tier right now, but he outpaced him in receptions. I think, again, he's another one that could potentially hop him this year. I was thinking about Royce Freeman, but the upside of Murray, if Kamara goes down this late, I had to go with him. How do you feel about we've talked about Latavius Murray. How do you feel about Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay really quick?
I mean, you see Royce Freeman's second-round pick a few years ago, and he's supposed to be the starter until undrafted free agent Philip Lindsay
shows up out of nowhere, dude.
Takes his job. But you see Freeman's got the better pass-catching ability, and Lindsay's the faster back. So in that offense, with the battle line, they like to run toss plays. They like to run stretches, like, away. But, I mean, I think if Lindsay's been durable, but if Freeman got the chance, he's bigger back, pass catcher. He could be the 3-down back there very easily. But he's one of those ones sits on your bench and annoys you. Like,
again, you can't play him with confidence unless Lindsay goes down. But just like Murray, if Lindsay is hurt, and Royce Freeman is the guy, I think he's Philip Lindsay and more, personally. Lindsay's great. I have no hate on Lindsay at all. I just feel like Royce Freeman is equally capable and somehow has a back seat in Denver. I'm not really sure what's up with that. Let's keep moving, man. You just picked Dallas Goedert in the 9th. In the 10th, you doubled up here at tight end. Why did you do that? Who did you pick and why?
I took Ian Thomas, and I love Ian Thomas is one of my favorite tight ends this year.
I like it a lot, actually.
Like you were saying before, you have Goddard, who could step into that role this year or could just be a top 10, top 15 tight end with Ertz there. So then I go Ian Thomas here, obviously. You have Greg Olsen leaving. You have Joe Brady coming in from LSU, and you saw with Thaddeus Moss what he could do offense. And especially you see Cam, who's had shoulder injuries, look check down, look 5-10 yards. And Ian Thomas has produced in that offense. So you plug him in there, starter, and if something happens to Ertz, you got Goddard, who would probably be the best tight end in football if he was the starter there. That's like one of those backup handcuffs that you do with the running back. Like, it's hard to do that with tight end because a lot of people only go one tight end because you can scoop someone off waivers. But I think in this case, you have two guys that could both be top 10.
100% agree. And here's the deal, man. When you play in flex leagues, if you had, hypothetically, you drafted Kelsey in the 2nd round last year, and you were like, fuck it, I got to get somebody super late just in case Kelsey gets hurt. I'm going to go with Mark Andrews in the 9th round.
Exactly.
I'm telling you right now, dude, by week 10, 11, 12 in fantasy, getting ready for fantasy playoffs, I would be surprised if you weren't playing both of them as your tight end in your flex because they become that good, right? So if Ian Thomas, it sounds kind of crazy now in March, but if Ian Thomas becomes Greg Olsen and if Dallas Goedert becomes Zach Ertz, you just hit potentially 2 top 5 tight ends at a very struggling position overall in the back half of your draft, man. I think that was great. Now, you know as well as I do, this could totally bite you in the ass, and it could super suck come week 3. But because we're at this point in the draft, you dump them both, you pick up 2 other waiver guys, and you try again. But I think the upside here was really smart on your part at the point of the draft.
Especially like going back, you see I have 4 running backs already here. So say both my tight ends don't pan out. You trade away Ingram, who's someone else's RB2, my RB3, trade him away for like a Mark Andrews, like a Hunter Henry.
Smart.
And you got yourself a top 5 tight end anyway. That's why you always got to go depth early and then tight end late.
I think that's a great strategy. Really quick on Ian Thomas, who I think casual fantasy players don't even know. He's been the backup for 2 years to Greg Olson, of course, for Carolina. It's been weird over there with Cam being hurt and fake playing and then being out and then having second, third string, whatever. Greg Olson in and out. Until week 13, Ian Thomas did not see a snap share, not a target share, a snap share above 22%. But week 13 on 43%, 86%, 96%, and then Greg Olson came back for the last two, 46 and 59. But he was able to get it done. His biggest game was in week 14 at Atlanta, 10 targets, which is big. 5 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown, but 10 targets is huge. We know that Carolina likes to target him. As you mentioned, Cam Newton, we'll see if he can even throw a ball. If he can't, he's going to be throwing slants all day to Ian Thomas. If Cam Newton's even in Carolina, I think he moves on as well. If they get a rookie quarterback, I think that they are really going to be targeting that tight end position. I don't think Kyle Allen's their guy. I actually like Will Greer a lot, their third string dude, but we saw last year, unfortunately, he's probably not going to pan out either.
I mean, and then you look. I mean, personally, I think the late round depth of the tight ends this year is crazy. Like all the high upside tight end guys you see right after Tyler Higbee went, and that's a great pick, but you just don't know in LA. You want one of them to leave, you want one of them to start, because they could both start somewhere else. You got Jared Cook after Howard, Doyle. And I think this year you just wait on tight end, just like you can wait on wide receiver.
I agree. I think Doyle's going to smash, honestly, dude. He's one of the few over 6'3" targets that the Colts have as of right now before the draft. And whatever they do at quarterback, it's going to be him. If it becomes Phillip Rivers, who I think a lot of people are predicting, we know that he loves the tight end. Ebron's going to be gone. Doyle was a tight end one with luck for a couple years before Ebron. If Doyle can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a super sleeper and going to absolutely smash this year personally.
And then going back to the tight end position, obviously we didn't have any rookies. But a name I love is Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame.
My man.
And especially a lot of people have been going to the Pats. And if Brady goes back and you got Kmet going there, that would be one of my favorite late round picks.
New Gronk?
Hopefully.
How do you feel about the talking NFL just for 1 second? Well, I guess NFL and fantasy. How do you feel about rookie tight ends in general? Last year, we see it very seldom that a rookie tight end goes into an offense, becomes a focal point, and produces enough to be fantasy relevant right away. How do you feel about, like, TJ Hawkinson before he got hurt was great. Noah Fant, when he eventually started getting targeted, was great last year. How do you feel about somebody like that getting drafted? Let's call it the Patriots. Let's call it New Gronk with Brady. Do you think it's automatic that he fits in that way, or is it a big process? Because tight end's tough, man. They got to learn the offensive line blocking schemes. They got to learn the route tree. They got to learn the blocking assignments and all this shit. I think it's very, very difficult for a tight end to really jump out early like that as a rookie.
So, yeah, like you seldom see like a rookie tight end top 10, top 5. And like you look like, for example, O.J. Howard, his rookie season took him more than half the year to overtake Cameron Brate. But, I mean, especially in that offense, if you get Kmet, say he went to the Pats, you get Kmet 11th, 12th round as your backup tight end. Because I think being a Patriots tight end with that floor, with Brady and that offense, I think he'd be an easy tight end start, especially with injuries that happen. You see, like, inconsistencies. I think that offense is just – like you saw – seldom they had like Ben Watson once in a while had a nice fluky game, like Matt Lacoste, you could see, but like you never start those guys.
Mike Vrabel, I mean, all sorts of guys, Yeah, I dig it, man. Let's keep cruising through the draft here. I had a couple late round quarterbacks. Daniel Jones. Are you really quick? How do you feel about Eli Manning in general, career wise? You're a Giants guy.
Yeah,
I like to hear from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, personally, I think he's a future Hall of Famer. Obviously, being a Giants fan. But a lot of people base his career off of what he did the last few years. And they look like, oh, he's never good. I mean, he's the only guy to beat the Pats twice in the Super Bowl. You got to give the guy some credit.
One of the few to beat the Pats, period, in the last 15 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, I dig it, man. Right on. How do you feel about Daniel Jones coming up? You confident for the next 10 years?
I love me some Daniel Jones.
Awesome, bro. Me too, actually.
I mean,
That
you see the running ability, like with Josh Allen, and he's such an underrated runner. Daniel Jones. You see him. They got Slayton, Shepard, Ingram, Tate, Saquon. Like how, especially as your backup. I mean, Zach drafted him here as a starter, but if you get Daniel Jones as your backup, I think top 10.
Bro, if you can rock a 2 QB league late round and you get
Oh,
like Stafford or Ryan and Daniel Jones or something like that, I mean, that's pretty nasty.
it's
I
gonna
dig
work
it.
on the
Going back,
fumbling.
yeah, right. Well, he'll fix that. I mean, that's rookie shit. He got to tuck it. You getting sacked. Guys are way faster in the NFL than they are in college, especially playing at Duke. I mean, you're just
Yeah,
not
there's
playing top
no one.
competition all the time. So let's move back here to your 11th, 12th, and 13th round. We got 3 more rounds here. Let's crush out the rest of this draft. The next pick for you, you just went double tight ends. And what did you do here in the 11th round?
All right, so I was looking. By this point, you got to look best player available, and I mean, you could either look high upside or just like a replacement. And I went Jameson Crowder here, who a lot of people don't realize had a very quiet good year, went 80 catches, which in PPR, like that's an easy flex, especially injuries. You've Crowder. Then that offense, you go with Robbie Anderson's leaving soon, potentially. You have Herndon, who's a question mark. Le'Veon Bell is not the same. So Crowder looked like the number one option for most of the year. So I love this pick personally.
I did too, actually. Jamison Crowder is sneaky, and of course, he benefited tremendously with Quincy Enunwa out. So we'll see what actually happens there with Sam Darnold coming back, not being sick, Le'Veon Bell actually doing something. I'm really worried about the Adam Gase effect, bro. I just am. I think he's toxic as shit, and I think he's going to hurt that offense in general until he's gone. However, with Jamison Crowder really quick, week 1, 17 targets, 14 receptions, just 99 yards somehow, but 17 targets. Going throughout the rest of the season, though, no more than 10 until week 15 when he had 11, and then 10 in week 17. It's just the consistency, having the accuracy from him, and Darnold needs to pick up. If it does, I think he's very sneaky, especially this late. I like that pick a lot. Moving into my 11th round pick, another guy who I love who's been tattered by injuries. I went with Marvin Jones, who I generally pick in like the 12th round of every draft for the last 5 years. If he's healthy, he's a wide receiver too, no question about it. Nobody respects him. Now that Galladay's around, he's obviously the alpha. Matt Stafford looks Marvin Jones in the end zone just as well. We know that the Lions don't run the ball. Even if they wanted to, their running backs are fucking hurt or terrible, so that doesn't matter. I like Marvin Jones a lot. He's been battling injuries, but in the 11th round as my wide receiver 4, I like that pick a lot. I think the upside's huge. He's led the Lions in touchdowns the last couple of years before he got hurt last year. But Kenny Golladay led the NFL in touchdowns. So I think Matt Stafford being healthy, basically played with a broken back. I mean, I think the Lions are another team that could seriously skyrocket if they could get a quality running back to stay healthy for at least 10 games or so. Moving into the rest of the picks here, let's circle back around. I had Justin Jackson in the 12th round. Again, this is strictly based on Melvin Gordon leaving town. Austin Eckler, I think, is fucking tremendous. Obviously, just had a huge payday, and he will be the starter for sure. But we've seen with the Chargers forever that they will use 2 running backs. If Austin Eckler is Melvin Gordon, hopefully Justin Jackson becomes Austin Eckler, and we saw what they were able to do last year. Again, a new quarterback's going to change things, but I think that Justin Jackson is sleeping. He's not going to get drafted in the 12th round come the season. I guarantee you that. He's going to be probably 8th round or so, I think, once Melvin Gordon lands somewhere and he becomes not third string. I thought this is a great value now in this draft in the 12th round, but he won't be there that long. Next up, you had your second quarterback. I have mixed feelings about this pick tremendously as a Niner homer, but you went with Jimmy Garoppolo here in the 12th round. Obviously, you have confidence in him picking him, but are you actually confident if he were to be your QB1?
Definitely not QB1. I took him here backup. Like, he's another one of those guys, like high floor backup. He'll give you touchdown a week. He's got those playmakers on the team. He's got Debo, got Kittle. Like, he doesn't have to be good necessarily. He just, check down and run. But as far as like the Brady speculation with the Niners, the pass trade, especially if he went to the Pats, that'd be a good situation for him. But as my QB2 here, I'm fine taking him. You see Baker is the only other QB to go after him. And then you pick someone up otherwise.
Totally agree, man. I'm of course I'm a huge Nick Mullins fan. Quick question: do you know who Nick Mullins is? Seriously,
Yeah, the third string.
my man. That's awesome. Most people don't even know who he is because he's not on the radar. But I just pay attention because I'm a Niner homer.
I actually went 2 years ago when he was starting most of the year. I really liked him. He had a great connection with Kittle, and you look at him. It's actually funny. His throwing mechanics are exactly the same as Garoppolo's. He's got that quick release, and I mean they picked him up, so obviously he wasn't drafted. You don't hear a lot about him, but I mean, with CJ Beathard too is quality quarterback. So
yeah, he's fine. That's my problem as a Niner fan, which I'm not going to get into my Niner homerness. This is another time. But my issue, I know we went to the Super Bowl. We were one throw away from winning. I know all that shit, but I'm super frustrated because as soon as we brought in Jimmy Garoppolo and had these other guys and paid him a shit ton of money, I was pissed. Because I thought there was other options and we could spend that money elsewhere. And I thought our quarterbacks could basically do what Jimmy was able to do.
Yeah.
That being said, Nick Mullins broke all of Brett Favre's records in college, which obviously is a big deal. So anyway, I'll move off of that. Next up, Hunter Renfrow, I think could be very sneaky for Oakland, especially if Tom Brady ends up there. He could be the new Julian Edelman for sure. And then circling back around, man, your last pick of the draft, at the 13th round, 7th pick of the 13th round, who did you go with and why? I thought this was potentially a super steal.
I took Lamar Miller here, and once again, it's just best player off the board. And let's see, 6th to last pick of the draft, so something happens to him, you cut him, pick someone else up. But the talent is definitely there. You saw, said only player to have 2 97-yard touchdowns. Obviously, one with the Dolphins, one with the Texans. But potentially, if the Texans go money savior here, they spend money on defense instead, and he comes back healthy, they cut Carlos Hyde. I potentially think he's easily a top 15 running back in that offense.
I think it's interesting, too. He feels, in one hand, he feels super young because he's missed some time, but on another, he feels super old. He's 28, 8th year in the league, out of Miami. I don't hate Lamar Miller. I'm just not a big fan. Honestly, of course, he loses last year with the torn ACL, but could be interesting to see what happens here with Lamar Miller. I thought, though, again, if he ends up being your starting running back, you picked him up in the 13th round because he's hurt right now and nobody knows what's up. So smart putting him on your radar there. Ending up the rest of the draft here, the last pick of the entire draft was Corey Davis. I'm not excited about Corey Davis. I don't like Corey Davis. Our co-host Daniel loves Corey Davis, and I give him shit all the time. However, again, best player available, value, whatever. Corey Davis has the talent. That's what's maybe frustrating to me is that we haven't seen it to the max that it could be. But in spurts with Mariota, he was able to make it happen. We know that A.J. Brown is quickly becoming the alpha in Tennessee, but Corey Davis, I think if they're a little bit more pass-centric, if they get rid of Derrick Henry, I think could really shine there. And as my wide receiver 5, and in the 13th round, it was a no-brainer to me.
Personally, I love Corey Davis. Every year I seem like I pick him up, put him down, people offer him after that one good week he has every year. But, obviously being the 5th pick in the draft a few years ago, the talent's there. Same thing with Mike Williams, who's also a top 10 pick in the draft. It's just something, I don't know. He's got good size, good speed, good hands. You see, he gets the ball. He'll have those few big games, but he just – and that maybe it's the offense. Maybe it's they don't focus on wide receiver 2, even though there's a wide receiver 1 there for a good amount of time. Just pick before that, Jacoby Myers.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised. Maybe it's just the last pick and second to last pick. This guy's just whatever. Let me take someone. But I'm surprised he didn't go Sanu here, being the Patriots' 2nd or 3rd wide receiver over Myers.
Could potentially just be the upside. I mean, there's a name. Again, in drafts like this, you're looking, I mean, before that, Larry Fitz, of course, you're just looking for the first 4 weeks. Darwin Thompson, Matt Breida, Boston Scott, Brashad Perryman, Benny Snell, Dede Westbrook, Marcus Valdez-Scantling. That whole last round is crossing your fingers. If these guys hit, you'll crush. Baker Mayfield was in there as well. So that's a lot of just high upside guys. As we round up the podcast, man, we're an hour in. I appreciate your time, bro. It's been a blast. I want you to run down your roster really quick, please, just straight up, like not necessarily you could do it by position or just run down round. I'll do the same thing, and then we'll cut.
All right. Nick Chubb in the first, and then followed by Josh Jacobs, Juju, Mark Ingram, Christian Kirk, Devontae Parker, Josh Allen, Kareem Hunt, Dallas Goedert, Ian Thomas, Jamison Crowder, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Lamar Miller.
I like those back-to-back tight ends in the 9th and the 10th. Solid upside, big value there. Josh Allen in the 7th I think is great. Jimmy G I'm not crazy about, but as a steady floor guy, if you need him by chance, I think that was a great pickup there too. Solid draft with the first 3 running backs, the first 3 wide receivers. Good strategy there. I went with first pick for me at the 12 spot was Chris Godwin. After that, Leonard Fournette, Calvin Ridley, Lamar Jackson, and Mark Andrews doubling up on the Ravens there. Tyler Lockett, 4 running backs in a row. Devonta Freeman, David Johnson, Duke Johnson, Latavius Murray. Strictly hoping for upside with all those guys, considering the risk. Marvin Jones, Justin Jackson, and Corey Davis to end out the draft. I want to give a big shout out to everybody in this IG league and in this mock. We're going to have more in these leagues and other chats as well. So big ups to everybody here that put this together, and I definitely want to give another shout out to Sack Attack and Mentor for squeezing me in here last minute, and Next Level as well, man. It's a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate you jumping on here to do this recap. I hope to reconnect with you again. It's been a blast. And before we get out of here, man, please let our folks know here at the TCK Pod where they can find your content.
If you guys go on Instagram, Next Level _fantasy football. During the season also, DM me, help you with your teams. Yeah, man. Spread the love.
Get it done, brother. You have a Twitter or YouTube, any of that stuff? Are you building on those sites, or are you just focusing on IG right now?
I'm on IG right now.
Deal. Fair enough. Y'all know where to find us. You can find us at the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast Facebook page. Of course, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a comment as well. Make sure you go follow Next Level. You can find us on IG as well, Fantasy Football _TCK Pod, on Twitter at TCK _pod. You can find us all over the place. Shoot us a DM. Shoot Next Level a DM. Make sure you let us know how you feel about our picks and this draft overall, where maybe we reached, maybe we got some value, some picks that you agree with and disagree with. We'll catch you next time on the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast. If you gain any value, please leave a rate and review on the podcast and a subscribe to the YouTube channel. And for Next Level Fantasy Football, I'm Sky with the TCK Pod Fantasy Football Podcast, and we are out of here.